Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Red, the series where I go back to games that were reviewed poorly and most often have a red score on Metacritic, and I try them out and see if they are really deserving of that or not. The first game in the series did end up having a lot of issues, and a lot of the reviews were pretty spot on. For the second episode, I thought we'd do something a little interesting. I have streamed and do stream a lot of Resident Evil games over on Twitch, but I have yet to play Resident Evil 6. It is probably the Resident Evil game you hear the most controversy about because any other Resident Evil game, like some of the side games, Umbrella Chronicles or etc., people just don't play them as much. So Resident Evil 6 is by far the one you hear the most complaints about, and there are even people dedicated as far as destroying copies of Resident Evil 6 because they hated it so much. So I tried it out. I started Chris's campaign on veteran difficulty, and I did stream the entire thing, so most of this is going to be clips straight from stream. So just as a disclaimer, this video is really only covering Chris's story and my experience playing that on veteran difficulty. If you really enjoyed any of the other campaigns in RE6, let me know which one I should play next, and especially if you think it would give me a different opinion of RE6 overall. One of the things I've been trying to do while playing through all the Resident Evil games is keep track of the lore and kind of the timeline and the intersection of everything, which is really hard to do. And the whole time I was playing Resident Evil 6, I was continuing to try to do that and see where it fits. I had no choice. As soon as oh, as soon as I had the choice, you play Chris. All right. Whoa. That's a little different than Africa. Adonia. I will go over more of the story at the end of this video. After this clip, we're going to talk about the mechanics, which I think is something that maybe will divide a lot of people on this game. We'll see. Interesting. Okay, so is this the only way to do my inventory, or do I tab? No, not tab. What is caps lock? What the heck is that? Oh, interesting. How do I deal with my inventory? So for me personally, I did have a little bit of a learning curve on the different mechanics and kind of how different things work in Resident Evil 6 compared to some of your more traditional types, especially, inventory, opening up a briefcase or etc. But once I got into it, I think I appreciated a lot of the mechanics, and I did switch to controller, which made it a little bit easier to just run and gun and, roll and dodge around. I actually really do like the roll mechanic, and when it becomes a slide, things like that. I can see how some people might not enjoy it coming from a Resident Evil game. But for me, it was just getting used to a new experience, and I feel there are a lot of mechanics that they introduce in games people don't play as much or people don't like that are good mechanics. Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 has a lot of fun little interactions, mechanics, and things you can do. But if they were in the mainline Resident Evil games, I could see people complaining. Inventory was one I could take or leave how it is. I could see the benefits, but also being able to organize your inventory and know specifically what you have in there is probably a big benefit to most players. So this inventory system, I could see complaints on that. This is probably where we should actually take just a real quick sideline and see what people complain about in the reviews, because outside of people on Twitch chat and Twitter just shitting on Resident Evil, I don't really know what the exact complaints are. So let's read some reviews real quick. So, as I thought, Resident Evil 6 is not exactly in the red. I like to use Metacritic because it's an aggregate of scores all over the place, and it does provide a user score as well. So, as you can see there, the mixed or average of the critic reviews is about a 67, and the user score is about a 5.3. So, it's very close to red, but not quite. So let's take a look and see what some of the reviews say. From a user review, Red Elson, please don't make other Resident Evil games like this in the future. And that's the whole review. Okay, let's read some of the critic reviews. 92, 92, 90, 90. So there are some critics that rated it really well. Let's go all the way to the negative reviews and just see what the complaints are. See, I want a review that actually pinpoints out what problem people had with it and not just this game is shit. So let's try GameSpot. How far can cinematics get you when the gameplay sandwich between them is so poorly paced, so utterly misconceived, so reliant on stick wiggles and button tapping? Okay, there is a lot of QuickTime events and things like that, and some of them are actually pretty hard. There's a place for contextual prompts and cinematic storytelling in video games, but Resident Evil 6 is a mishmash of elements put together without any sense of care or direction. Okay, what about Polygon? Leaves players with the shell of a blockbuster game. It blusters along with massive explosions and insane plot twists, but it lacks a fundamental understanding of why action games are fun. Okay. I mean, I feel like Resident Evil has always had tons of explosions and insane plot twists. That's like every single Resident Evil game. So really still not much to go off of there. Okay, here's this one from Destructoid. Resident Evil 6 is a Michael Bay movie. There's really no more polite way to put it. Stuffed to the gills with bombastic action segments, car chases, and relentless chaos. So, having finished the game now, I was thinking, okay, there are in Chris's stories some jet parts, some car parts. That was my dog just saying hi. And I thought about that for a second, but then I think Resident Evil 4 has a lot of those same things. You know, jet ski part, boat part, blah, blah, blah. And some people do complain about those, but... Now we're going to talk more about the story and my thoughts on it. Previously reading the reviews, it seems like people don't necessarily complain about the specific story, just how it's represented with a lot of explosions and high, octane action moments, which I'm personally going to say I don't think is fair to come at a Resident Evil game like that. They've always been full of those, except for maybe, the original one or two. The more technology has come along, I think more and more Resident Evil games have been that. There's, like I said, jet ski part in RE4. There's, Resident Evil 5 with boulder punching. Resident Evil 7, a little more grounded, but I mean, you have some intense boss fights there. You have the helicopter at the end. Resident Evil 8, explosions, all sorts of crazy stuff all over, wild boss fights, a factory. So I'm gonna say they get 1 point for mechanics. The mechanics are iffy, I will give it that. Explosions and yada yada. It's Resident Evil, man. Come on. So going forward, we are going to get deep into spoilers of Resident Evil 6. You have been warned. I feel like there's really only one more element of the game to cover, and that is story. I actually enjoyed the story in Resident Evil 6. Of course, just Chris's campaign so far. But I will say, going into the game, I only expected to play Chris's campaign to get an idea and see what was so terrible about it. Now that I have played it, I actually want to go back and play different campaigns to get other sides of the story. There's really only one part of the story that didn't really click with me from what I know about Resident Evil lore. Let me know what you think, but it's the story of Ada. Now, I've heard, of course, that there are more pieces to everything, but I mean, take this scene, for example, right here. Classic Ada.
The escort. Here's something to remember me by.
What the fuck? Did she actively just inject them? Wow. Is that the most evil thing she's ever done, basically? Damn. I can't believe it. That right there is not really a redeemable action at all, and throughout the entirety of Chris's story, what Ada is basically doing is making his life a living hell, making fun of him for people that he's lost. You know, Chris and the team save her, and then she turns around and does that. And later on, she even basically does it again. She is actively killing people with her own hand for no good reason. And then her major goal is to release the virus worldwide. And I know Ada's done, you know, little naughty things here and there, but from my memory, nothing this heinous. And it was very surprising, and I don't know if it's out of place or maybe it just needs to be expanded on. I don't know. For me, the story and learning more about Chris and kind of what he has gone through, seeing him struggle and work through issues, you know, losing team members, losing friends, it was a very interesting story. And to me, it gives us an idea how we got the Chris that is in Resident Evil 6, then over into Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil 6 Chris looks really comparable to what I think someone would look like before the events of the next game. Well, not this one. Resident Evil 8. We don't know what happened during 7 with that one. But looking at Resident Evil 6, knowing everything Chris went through, looking at just his character model even, and knowing the story, it makes it really easy to see how he looks and acts like he does in Resident Evil 8. So, in the end, I really don't think it deserves as much hate as it gets. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed it, what parts you enjoyed. If you hated it, what made you hate it. I really just most often hear jokes and comments about how it is the worst Resident Evil and no one should play it. So please like and subscribe and let me know. Oh, come on, buddy.